Among the stars of the night, there is land as old as imagination. Welcome everyone to Moonlighter, where mysterious dungeons were uncovered. A town was built from curiosity. You live there as a merchant, but your everlasting dream is exploring and defeating the mystic labyrinths. So, attempt 1. Quickly grasping some basic moves, I rolled over ledges, enemies, and projectiles, took out some slimes and looted some chests. Things were looking good. The boss was up ahead, I was sure. This level was getting a little difficult though. Attempting my escape, I was knocked out. I was rescued by a man named Zenon who, bringing me back to the Moonlighter, my store, explained I was the only one left to run the place, and I shouldn't aim for the 5th door. Handing me some gear anyways, I was walked down to be taught the rules of supply and demand, and when the customers left, I was welcome once again to head to the dungeons. There were 5 here: the forest dungeon, the tech dungeon, the desert dungeon, the final massive door, the 5th one no sign of a name, and the golem dungeon, one I was able to enter. Taking out some enemies, I slowly advanced deeper. My progress halted when I entered a strange area. There was a skeleton at the top, and reading its notes, he was a man named Old Pete. He explained that each dungeon had a boss who dropped a key, 4 of which were needed for the final door, the 5th door of Rhinoka. Questions of this place stayed unanswered though. I teleported home using a coin-consuming pendant and chatted with Zenon again, who explained if I had enough funds, the merchants would set up their homes here. For that though, I was much too poor, and spent my night setting up the store for the morning customers using the loot I had plundered. I decided not to open though, due to a lack of stock, so deciding to familiarize myself with the residing townsfolk. I wandered past some abandoned buildings, proof of this town's once prosperity, talking with everyone, then deciding to descend once again into the dungeons. My goal was arriving at the boss golem and narrowly surviving a slime fist. I continued my exploration until I was met by a pond. Gingerly sinking in, I was surprised to see my health regenerated. So ready to preserve my momentum, I opened the next door to find the golem warrior. Was this the key holder? Was I close to completing the dungeon? I was unskilled and unprepared though, and was quickly knocked out. Close call. I'm truly lucky to be alive. Dungeon attempt 3. Hoping I wouldn't run into the golem again, I simply aimed to gather some loot, but finding another pond, I naively thought nothing of it and continued forth. Well, there goes half of my loot. I still had some though, so returning to my store, I placed some on sale and began experimenting with the prices. Through purely trial and error, I was able to deduct a fair price at pretty low demand, making a solid 1600 gold that day. By the time I closed, night had fallen, and it was time to once again descend. Clearing one room, I looted the chest to find some peculiar items, holding enchantments of sorts, so organizing them neatly to interact, I also found a different door, a forest of some kind. Entering slowly, it was exactly that. There was no continuation though, so I assumed it was just some of the forest dungeons infecting the area. I fought a couple more tough battles, but eventually fled due to low health and lack of potions. But it was day 4 now, and I had some funds to my name. Reading the community board, I decided to purchase Vulcan's Forge, who promptly took residence in an abandoned building. It seemed I could upgrade my weapons and armor here using gold and various resources, both of which were out of my league. I still had a further 1000 though, and spending it on a wooden hat. Another person took residence, someone named Eris. She could mix slime into potions, so brewing 4 of them for tonight's expedition, and seeing my very sad looking gold sack, I returned to my store, setting up some stock and opened up. There wasn't a huge amount of stock, so I could safely use reasonable pricing, and seeing my successful raid yesterday, I had a whole lot to get rid of, ending the day getting a massive 1900, but it was time to lock in. Jumping in, my main goal today was to take out that massive golem, but having some trouble in the first room, I was lucky to find a pond. Healing myself fully and entering the boss room. This time I was prepared, but just as unskilled, still managing to take out the massive creature. It dropped a bunch of loot, giving me access to another area. Welcome to dungeon level 2. A note sat in the middle, explaining a strange mirror that traded gold for any item, so picking it up, I could use it when my pendant wanted more than I could provide. Entering the first door, I got too scared and promptly left. This had supplied me with some solid goods though, so opening the store, I showed off the new stock, selling for quite a lot, but my customers seemed happy with it, and constantly changing the price throughout the day, I got rid of most of my belongings, making an impressive 4,300 gold. More importantly, the second level was there to be explored. Unfortunately, I restarted at level 1, running into an absolute beast of an enemy who completely rolled me, and with no healing, I was forced to leave with 2 vines and 1 stick. Very affluent though, I bought a sail bin for my store, then wanting some more survivability, I talked with Eris, brewing a bunch of potions. That was very expensive, and due to yesterday's absolute failure of a quest, I was left with absolutely absolutely nothing other than 2 vines and 1 stick, so returning to the dungeons was my only move, once again running into a beast of an enemy, this time using my provided shield to block some attacks, managing to win the interaction. Finally, another pond as well, entering the boss room with full health and taking the big boy out. Level 2 was scary though, so deciding to complete this first level, I fell into the void, arriving at a strange basement area. There was a single chest, empty, which I randomly placed all of my belongings into. When I went back though, it was gone. More inventory space, I guess. Entering level 2 looking for some expensive things, I was almost knocked out only after taking out an impressive amount of enemies. Back in town, I was also happy to find the stuff I left inside the chest in my house. I was truly stacked, but seeing as it was far too late to open now, I headed right back inside, and with some newfound confidence, I aimed to take out the 2nd level golem and move on to the final boss. Taking out the first golem, I slightly struggled through level 2. Inventory brimming with goodies, I entered the random floor to find the 2nd golem. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave. I actually jumped in real life. At this point, I was so looted up that my chest literally didn't have any more space. The obvious solution seemed to be to purchase the chest upgrade for 4,000 gold, but seeing my lack of 4,000 gold, I opened up the store. This is when something curious happened. I sold all of the things I'd plundered, no longer leaving me with the problem of chest space. Wow. I did have enough though by closing time, but not wanting to waste it, I instead descended once again, finding another sparkle in the void and dropping down. Here was a brick, which I activated, creating 3 portals, which spawned a bunch of enemies. I was luckily able to take them all out, but not wanting to see anything further, I took the looted cave and left. A couple of levels after, I ran into another red golem who just decided to be invincible to all attacks for a bit, knocking me out. I may have lost everything, but I still had a decent amount of cash and some items remaining from other runs, so placing them all on sale and opened the Moonlighter, I quickly passed the 10,000 gold mark, making 4,500 that day. And reading the community board, I decided to purchase the iron cash register for a 10% tip chance. The rich get richer or something, so I spent 2 grand on some potions, and filled with confidence, I re-entered the golem dungeon. And this was quite a special run, as around the middle, I managed to find a training bow, my first ranged weapon. Equipping it instead of my broom, I continued, finding a pond and taking out the golem, eventually filling my pockets and heading home. Apparently, I had hatched myself a flying golem, a little guy that would follow me around and assist my dungeon crawling. Before that though, I spent some time assimilating with the townsfolk, meeting Tomo, the nobody, and putting some gear on sale. Eventually everything was sold out and I made almost 8,000 gold in a day, once again appearing at the dungeon, filling my inventory in the early stages of level 2, then escaping safely. 15,000 in my pocket, I brewed up a heap of potions, and saying hello to Vulcan, I realized I could afford a gear upgrade, which I happily purchased. Excited to see how much better this set was, I opened up my store to burn away the day, accidentally selling some nice level 2 artifacts for less than their worth, heading out when night fell. It was cold and windy that night. Seeing Zenon near the dungeons, I sat down to have a chat. He spoke of the lives lost in the further dungeons, and the passing of my father as one of them in his quest to unlock the 5th door. Reinvigorated, I dove into the labyrinth, finding another teleporting chest, and finishing my run with a juicy, filled up inventory. Looking through Vulcan once again, I noticed that to build some armor, in general, I only needed foundry rests. I needed nothing for the bow though, so I upgraded it, moronically selling my only foundry rests 3 seconds later after forgetting I needed them, along with a bunch of other items, making a reasonable amount, testing out my bow outside and heading back inside with the goal of defeating the 2nd golem warrior. On my way, I fell into a strange pit, no chest this time, but a single pedestal, holding a book named Golem History 1. Assuming this was important somehow, I continued, thwarting the first golem when I arrived, throwing my goods into the teleporter chest, and eventually finding myself faced by the level 2 warrior. Getting used to the quickly appearing attacks, I luckily realized that was just about all the itinerary it had, and I easily defeated it. Finally, level 3. Here I discovered another note, along with another pendant, more expensive, but creates a 2-way portal. I did some quick exploration of the 3rd golem dungeon level, even finding a claymore, which was unfortunately very unwieldy, creating myself the perfect inventory and returning home. A less unwieldy weapon would have to be the ones in War Thunder, the sponsor of this video, and only the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever released free of charge on both PC and console. Drive 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships of 10 major nations, from biplanes and armored cars to the fighter jets and battle tanks of today. Now if you hit someone, it's not just a loss in health. Each vehicle is intricately modeled, so hitting any individual part will have a unique effect on your enemy, behaving just like the vehicle's real-world counterpart. But what if I have a potato as a computer? Don't fret, my friend. War Thunder was built to deliver a lag-free experience on low-end machines, while maintaining realistic graphics and impressive combat. My personal recommendation even is the realistic mode so realistic that players often recreate famous battles in games, such as the Battle of Stalingrad fought between the USSR and Germany. Join them free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox by clicking the link in the pinned comment or the video description. Worried you'll be behind everyone else? Well, across all platforms, new and returning players who haven't played in at least 6 months will get a massive bonus pack including 100,000 silver lions, an exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, and 7 days of premium account. Anyways, I was getting quite sick of having 100 health, and to change this, I headed to the blacksmith and crafted myself a steel chestplate plus 50 health, then headed to the wooden hat where I brewed a bunch of potions. Not that terrifying anymore thanks to my funds. This fact was very much accentuated when selling all the things I grinded for. I ended the day with a massive 15,000 gold in profit. Naturally, wanting to reward myself, I entered the blacksmith again and purchased a claymore upgrade before descending into the dungeons again looking for the 4th floor. Easily enough making it to the 3rd, I began my quest, shut it down as quickly as it had started by the power these enemies unfortunately held. They were certainly not balling like I was though, and seeing my extra funds, I was happy to purchase Lever Taylor, the 4th merchant to set up in the town. I would certainly stay in business though, as my man here was selling exactly the same stuff as me at exuberant prices. Oh well, still rich though, and slightly worried about my customers, I decided to purchase a store upgrade which doubles my space and added decoration slots, opening this brand new store and selling away all of my dungeon goods. 13,000 extra in the bank today, also unlocking Hawker, who I could request to visit for 20 grand. As such, my nightly run on day 13 was dedicated to simply getting loot and escaping. No funny nor dangerous business. This turned out to be a decent plan. With these gathered materials, I first purchased some boots for an extra 25 health, some potions for some extra health on top of that, entering my store and opening up. Today though, I had a strange occurrence. A customer walked in showing a mask symbol. What could that mean? I wondered, as they grabbed some stock and started running to the exit. Such a plan quickly stopped by my unimaginable strength. So yeah, that happened. Returning to the dungeons, I had no real plan today other than to restock for tomorrow. Sending some loot off in the teleporter, I got a whole heap of loot in level 3, deciding I could definitely continue if this drop was a chest. It was not a chest. Day 15 was a special one, as at long last, I had a complete set of armor ready to take on level 4 of the dungeon, adding extra precautions by enchanting all 3 pieces at the wooden hat to have extra defense. I expected huge loot too, so selling off all of my items that were clogging my chest, I made a huge 20 grand. But that was not the highlight. Re-entering the dungeon, I took out the first golem with ease, quickly finding the second one and taking it out, arriving at the 3rd golem's pond and clearing the path, slowly entered. And uh-oh. It seems there is no level 4, and I just wandered into the final boss room of the Golem dungeon. My opponent was the Golem King. I was enchanted and prepared though, so weighing my chances, I got to work, dodging the flying hand of the falling rocks, taking the slime laser, and realizing at around 60% health remaining that I had run out of potions. It was now or never. All of this run's loot depended on my abilities. Hit once again by the laser, I began using my claymore. Hit once again by the hand. Hit again, I couldn't afford to be hit once more. Going all in, I took out the final boss within seconds of losing everything. This was truly a great moment for the Red TM channel. Please, subscribe. Grabbing my well-deserved loot, I returned. 1 out of the 4 keys was now in place, and I was told by Zenon that the villagers had now unlocked the forest dungeon for anyone to explore. This was certainly an exciting prospect, so selling a bunch of things I got from my boss run, I managed to make a gigantic 30,000 gold, and hyped to see what it had in store, I entered the forest dungeon. Other than running into a heap of new enemies, I also got a preview for the next dungeon, a desert area of sorts. Pretty nice loot, and once I completed all of the first forest floor, I decided that rather than fighting the boss, I would rather escape. I remembered about Hawker the merchant on day 17, so inviting him over, I spent some money on brewing some potions and had a look through his goods, which seemed to be decorations for my store. I already had some in place though, so spending the day in my own store, experimenting with the prices to find a reasonable point to sell my forest loot from, and when night fell, I once again found the old man sitting by the dungeons. This time, I asked about the lands outside of Rhinoka, which I was told held no particular significance, and about my mother, who again, I wasn't told anything specific, but by Zenon's tone, I could tell that she was no longer with us. The reason the Moonlighter was left to me, now clear as day. I continued through the forest dungeon, feeling more confident in myself, and ventured into the first boss room. Luckily for me, my defense was so high from enchanting it, I was able to stand there and swing while tanking all of the attacks like a beast, quickly allowing me to access level 2. I'm quite terrified though, so I escaped. Day 18 was a very normal day. I began by filling the store with my newfound loot, buying a chest upgrade for a measly 20,000 gold, then opened up the store, continued with my forest loot pricing experimentations. This turned out to be successful enough, making myself the 20,000 gold back that day, ending with a very normal forest dungeon run, strictly to make some money. Supporting my fellow merchants, I realized was very essential in a small town such as our own. So heading to Hawker's establishment, I purchased 2 pieces, both of the increased tip value, and placed down the bowl of fruit. Very nice. Oblivious to how much it helped or not, I sold a heap of goods that day, realizing just how expensive some of the items I was grabbing were, and seeing dollar signs, I headed down to get some more. It had truly been a while since the last time I passed out here, so guards slightly down, I gathered a heap, jump scared by a chest mimic who would sporadically jump around the room, leaving very little time for retaliation, eventually landing right on me, resulting in the loss of all of my materials. But restart, huh? Hoping this wouldn't take up too much of my day, I began my journey again, very conscious of my missing potions, but wanting some loot anyways. I charged on 4th. Guard fully up this time. I was careful in collecting just as much as was safe, then quickly making my escape, returning home to realize it was the dead of night of the next day. Slightly devastated, I purchased an upgraded bed for myself and decided to sleep for the first time in 20 days. Now, the forest dungeon had supplied me with some yellow jelly, which, talking to Iris, apparently allowed the brewing of way better potions. So, stacked up and ready to defeat some enemies, I descended for day 21. Attempt 1. Quickly finding the level 1 tree, I defeated it with ease, and with momentum now, I carried on through the stages, arriving at the 2nd level tree, slowly losing confidence as the fight went on, and being knocked out. Damn. Day 21, attempt 2. My main goal this time being simply gather resources to sell. I steered clear of the stage 2 boss, gathered enough for satisfaction, and leaving promptly. Vulcan had seen my work, unlocking a new piece of armor, which I wanted. I did not have 44 grand though, so setting up my shop, I manned for the morning, attempting to sell my new desert items, which I apparently was asking much too much for. Nonetheless, making enough gold to purchase the upgraded chest plate. I now had 318 health, but not stopping there. I wanted a sword gear upgrade, but lacking wooden money, I trotted down to gather some. This was when a certain miracle happened. Heading into the depths, I found something special sitting on the pedestal. Was Forest History 1. I knew this was going to sell for a lot. Also knowing I couldn't lose it, I teleported home. Unfortunately, my lack of courage left me without the resources to purchase the sword upgrade. So to make up for it, I opened my store to get rid of the artifacts and resources. Heading back inside the dungeons, and in the process of looking for the wood for my weapon, I ran into something. It was the level 2 pond. Beyond sat the tree I had lost everything to, but with glory to gain, I ran in. Carefully dodging the attacks and going in when its guard was down, I expertly rolled between the massive roots, eventually managing to take it out. Relaxing in the pond, I decided not to explore further,
Cause that's kind of scary.
Everything was ready though for my sword upgrade, except for the money. What's more, I didn't have enough loot sitting around to facilitate opening my store, so making the decision to descend twice today, I began attempt 1. And nothing really happened in attempt 1. I got a decent amount of loot and happy with my progress, I returned home. Attempt 2 though was when things heated up. I took out the level 1 tree, wanting my hands on some expensive stuff lying around. I got a bit greedy, started a fight with only 1 potion. I was forced to down it, dodging the attacks, then taking my opportunity to activate my pendant, and I was too late. There goes all of my things. I still had attempt 1's items though, so with the aim of 60,000 total to afford the sword upgrade, I opened up my store to the public. I still had some outrageous prices, but also some outrageously expensive things, and with so many items to sell, I continued restocking until the dead of night, making a gigantic 80,000 gold, ending with over 100,000 total in my pocket. Well, I might as well just spend a little bit of it, I thought. First purchasing the sword upgrade, then wandering to the wooden hat, I purchased an enchantment for it. This increased the damage of the sword. I lost 90 grand in 30 seconds. So to make up for such clownery, I grinded strictly for money that night, taking out the first boss unbelievably easily and filling my inventory. And a nice inventory it was, facilitating a massive profit day of over 50,000 gold. This put my total above 60, which meant I could buy the next store upgrade. You know, I should probably save though, instead of making rash purchases, invest in the future. The new store came with an ordering system and burglar protection. Unfortunately, I had landed completely broke though, so without the funds for nice potions, I brewed up some trash ones. Staying safe in the dungeons, I managed to come across another trial chamber, deciding to attempt the second wave, which I took out quite easily, being rewarded with some decent loot. I had a goal on day 27. This goal first required potions though, so selling just a couple of items, I made enough, brewed enough, and descended. Now, said goal was to complete a trial chamber, continue through the waves until they stopped appearing. I actually managed to find one, completed the first wave, and the next, until eventually I couldn't go any further. I opened the chest in anticipation, getting some damn good loot and a luck charm. I exited with a near perfect inventory. What a great opportunity now. With so much loot to sell, I filled my newly upgraded area, placing the most expensive things safely in the glass cases. Business was very good once again that day, making almost 60,000. Unfortunately, still just 4 grand off the golden cash register, so instead I bought a new bed, as I knew I would make the money back, grinded for money in the dungeon, and upon discovering another trial chamber, made sure to complete it. Alright, day 29. The day of the cash register. I needed 24,000 gold to afford it, so placing in my most expensive wares, I experimented slightly with the prices, managing to sell out, making significantly more than anticipated, to be exact 29,000. With this, I bought the golden cash register, chanced for a 40% tip, and now having returned to my less wealthy roots, I spent the night grinding for resources, even finding another desert area, which I happily plundered. When I got home, I checked my pets, which I slowly gained from taking out a bunch of their counterparts and finding eggs, to find the poisonous slime gave a poison effect to my weapons. This sounded awfully strong paired with a bow, so deciding that would be my itinerary now, I opened the store to make 60 grand, wanting to purchase the banker, who unfortunately didn't yet think Rhinoka was popular enough. Then for some reason, I headed to bed for the first time in 10 days. I was currently 1 log off upgrading my bow, and never really having used it, I decided to give it a go, and damn, this thing is strong and satisfying, and what have I been doing with this goofy sword? Although admittedly a melee weapon is more useful at some points, I eventually secured all of the wood I needed, that being a single piece, and upgraded my bow. For maximum strength, and enchantment was also needed, too expensive though, so entering the forest dungeon again, I aimed to descend as far as possible, completely scrapping such a goal as soon as my inventory was filled. Because of this, checking the next morning, I noticed I could afford every piece of upgraded armor, other than the gold cost. So with the aim of becoming a rich man, I got to work selling all of my goods, noticing people were getting a bit sick of fruit bowls, and even accepting an order request for a solid 30 grand. By the time I closed, I was 120,000 gold richer, and very pleased with such a result. I placed in some decor around my shop, stepped out triumphantly, crafted both of my new headgear and boots. Wow, I'm still rich though, so also purchasing an enchantment for my chestplate, I was feeling quite invincible, excitedly running into the forest dungeon with eyes on the level 2 guardian. Morale was high, but my potion count was low, and I was forced to retire early. No matter, it's time to expand the stock. Now, what I mean by this is I wanted to start selling weapons, but unfortunately I needed vastly more basic resources only found in the Golem dungeon, which at this point could do no harm to me, so I happily headed inside. And look how quickly I took out this guardian, and this one as well. My inventory was well and truly full when I returned home, put everything away, and did the logical thing in going straight back inside. As such, funds were beginning to get dangerously low, and to counter such a conundrum, I set out all of my goods and opened up the store. Now, by no means was today a mad money making day, but I did manage to sell my forest history book for a reasonable 11,000. Thanks to this, I was able to enchant my bow, wander back inside the Golem dungeon with a swagger in my step, completely rolling the entire Golem dungeon, literally completing the entire thing, and filling my pockets with basic loot. Selling this basic loot was useless, so instead crafting up 2 spears, I also upgraded them both once, and sure that my new stock would bring some new people in, I opened the Moonlighter with them safely in the display cases. They were sold at slightly less than I had hoped, but overall making a decent profit that day. I realized I could enchant all of my armor, which was exactly what I did, and completely dripped out now. I entered the forest dungeon. I had 1 goal today, the final boss. The first guardian was easy enough, the second one took some work, but I passed without a sweat. Running through the rooms, I conserved my potions as best I could, eventually arriving at the final pond. Apprehensively walking through the door, all that faced me was a small flower, and then some tentacles. Then slowly the ground broke to reveal a massive, creeping, bulbous abomination. Keeping my distance and relying on my bow, I was careful to dodge its many attacks, taking out the small supporting units before going in with my sword, and at long last taking out the massive beast. The forest dungeon was complete. In my reward chest was more forest history. I would be eating good tonight. Key number 2 was complete, and returning to town, Zenon greeted me, saying that that was about as far as I should go, but also that the desert dungeon was now open. open. That was a job for future me though, and getting to work selling everything I'd plundered was what I needed now. Good thing too, that night I made 115,000 gold. Tonight was also eerily cold, and sitting by the campfire, I asked the old man about Rhinoka, the town we currently lived in. He explained it as once being a prosperous area until the dungeons took out too many. Oh well. Entering the desert area, I wandered through the many rooms, eventually finding a somewhat inhabited place with a note. It explained the oddness of the guardians on each level, and hypothesized them as being somewhat unintentional. Speaking of which, I'd walked into the room of one, but my enchanted armor allowed a quick end to the fight. I escaped holding all of my belongings. Desert loot must be damn expensive, so imagining my future prosperity, I opened the store, spending some time experimenting with some prices and hoping not to be ripped off. And I don't think I was, ending the evening with impressive 226 grand pocketed. Using my newly acquired wealth, I purchased both a bed and a discount box upgrade before running back inside the dungeon looking for more money, because I'd truly been shown what was available. I ran out of healing though, forcing my retreat. On day 38, I noticed Rhinoka had grown in popularity, unlocking the banker. I purchased the man who showed up and told me he was busy and I should wait 3 days. I just paid this man 70,000 gold. I set up my shop nonetheless, and heading outside, I noticed that the town really was getting more popular. So wanting to maximize profits, I purchased more decor and placed them around, opening the Moonlighter for business and selling everything at their newly discovered fair prices, making 230,000. This allowed the crafting of a level 3 helmet, and wanting gloves next, I set my sights on some wood, descending into the depths to collect some. I didn't collect enough though, so returning to the desert the next morning, I went through the rooms at a breakneck pace, getting slightly impatient at the tiny amount of wood that I was getting. So impatient, in fact, that upon finding the final boss room, I just entered, taking care of everything that was inside, and very luckily for me, being rewarded with some wood for my efforts. Using it, I ordered an upgrade for my gloves, which were basically a replacement for my sword, and accidentally, just by muscle memory, entered the forest dungeon, deciding it was a good excuse to try my new weapon out. It was kind of strong. This dash is really fun as well. Anyways, Day 40. Thanks to my recent dungeon crawling, my chests were filled with useless items, so to get rid of them, I opened my store, not worrying about a slightly lower revenue day. This ultimately did not matter, as I was able to afford a third store upgrade, and heading inside, I had unlocked a hireable staff member. This was very hype, and looking forward to a big sale day tomorrow, I wandered to the desert dungeon to restock. Falling in a pit, I found a trial chamber as well, which I, feeling a little overconfident, managed to complete in its entirety, claiming a solid prize. Said prize was sold when I arrived home, used simply as a vessel from which I could experiment with how much someone was willing to pay for it. Some solid profit was made nonetheless, which I headed down and handed to Vulcan in return for an upgraded chestplate. Now, with over 500 health, I had a look and decided that bricks and core things were on my radar for some upgraded gloves. When I was down in the crypts though, I found something peculiar, a small area of the tech dungeon. A dark area with electric jellyfish crab characters. They did not manage to end my pillaging, because in the end, it was simply my own stupidity. I had not picked up enough bricks. Oh well, I guess it's time for day 42 brick attempt 1. Although I had made good progress through the rooms, bricks were nowhere to be found, unlike me playing basketball. Eventually, I got too deep for my own safety and I was forced to leave. Good loot, no bricks. It was time for day 42 brick attempt 2. This was a very normal run, concluding with the discovery of a single brick. Very exciting. Thanks to these 3 consecutive runs, I now had a large amount of very sellable items, so opening my store, I got slightly annoyed at this one customer who just loitered, not purchasing a single item the entire time, but overall sold almost everything, ending the day with a grand profit of almost 500,000 gold. This didn't matter though if my brick count was not sufficient, which it wasn't. Still needing one more, I began day 43 brick attempt 1. This was once again one of the runs. Coming across some more tech dungeon, but in the end, not finding a single brick, unlike me playing basketball. I remember the next morning that I had indeed purchased the banker. Unfortunately, he was busy right now and still couldn't be spoken to. Well, day 1 of waiting for the banker. I began by selling a whole load of things still left over from the Great Brick Expeditions, even managing to reach over 1 million gold in total, being reminded that I didn't in fact have enough bricks, and got back to work searching. I ended the night with 1 more brick. Day 2 of waiting for the banker. Luckily, this 1 brick was all that I needed, so I happily purchased an upgrade for my fists. This was when disaster struck. I realized there was just 1 day until my order of taking Katamari golems was due, but with an order to complete today, I opened very briefly just to complete it, then sprinted out to the dungeons and got searching. Luckily, my upgraded fists were very good indeed, reaching level 2 and filling my inventory to a satisfactory degree. Eventually finding all the notes that I needed, proof of me taking out the golems, happily returning home. Day 3 of waiting for the banker. Thanks to the limited shop opening yesterday, I had so much to sell, and taking advantage of such a situation, I was able to profit enough to the point I headed to the wooden hat and purchased an enchantment for both my gloves and my chest plate. Completing some brewing too, I wandered up having a seat with the old man again and asking about Tomo, one of the villagers. Apparently, she was kind and eager to explore the dungeons, and what's this? She was also asking about me? What? Wait, what? What? Heading into the desert dungeon, I planned today to defeat the second level golem, and reaching the pond easily enough, I was hopping in and out and entering the golem room, I locked in, expertly dodging attacks. I took it down with relative ease, but thinking the third level was mighty scary, I decided to leave. Day 4 of waiting for the banker. I'm losing my patience. Anyways, I'd gathered enough brick for a bow upgrade, so purchasing one, I brewed up some potions, then headed to Hawker's carriage. I'd forgotten to though, so returning, I enchanted my bow, placing down the decor and having a solid profit today. Not at all aided by this loiterer. She is just wasting space in my store. The entire time, by the way. I did a short run that night just for store loot, but was excited as tomorrow surely the banker would speak with me. And if you'd look at that, he actually did. I didn't really understand what was going on though, so blindly trusting the top-hatted man, I handed over 1 million of my hard-earned money, presuming he would invest smartly and get back on the 27th or something. Oh well, just to wait now, I made some new boots with my remaining funds, then enchanted them as well. Opening the Moonlighter for a slightly shorter day, I got an upgrade for puppets to be taken out, as well as selling a crossbow, which, jokes on them, was broken. Puppet man had promised 40 grand though if I followed through, so desperate for that money now that the banker took all of my belongings, I grinded all the way down to level 3 searching for them. It was not a great idea for me to be here, but being the brave man I am, I took out a couple of rooms, lost all confidence, and left. As such, it was time to expand my itinerary. Fists and bows and arrows seemed good enough, but imagining that they may be the problem, I set my sights on a spear, but needing basic resources again, I descended into the golem dungeons. This place really stands no chance against me these days. I was happy to have a chill time and gather all that I needed in peace. Thanks to this, I was able to craft a spear on day 50, needing some wood for an upgrade, but randomly deciding to speak with the banker, I'm down 22%. This man lost me 220,000 gold. I have faith in my bald-headed friend though. So switching over to the new fire slime pet, I checked out my chests before opening time to find not much at all, and decided that there was really no point in opening, so I wandered over to the dungeon to do some proactive restocking. It was a relatively successful morning, and I returned ready to open, deciding since I had already gone, I may as well head to bed for the first time in 10 days. Now, the banker, who I spent 70 grand on and entrusted 1 million to, had in fact lost almost 700,000 of said funds. That is just unfathomable. Hoping this thick-tied goober would get his act together, I headed down to the forest dungeon as to gather wood for a spear upgrade to see if it was any better than my fists. Quickly enough, I secured the requested amount, and returning by nightfall, I was able to upgrade it twice, and excited to give it a shot, I headed to the desert dungeon this time, as to make back the stupid amount of money the bald man had lost to me. There was ultimately no need for such harsh words though, as the next day, he was up 22%. Yeah, sure, it would only get better from here. I let it marinate, realizing that it was the final day for a quest and opened the store to complete it. Taking the opportunity to get rid of some stock as well, I gained almost 800,000 gold in profit that day. Feeling good about myself, I set another lengthy goal. Heading down, I decided I wanted to complete the desert dungeon today. Taking out the first guardian, I ran through the rooms, trying not to waste potions, taking out the second guardian, and eventually arriving at the final pond with no heals left. I went home. Here, I realized I'd unlocked this silly fella, so changing him to my pet instead, I checked the banker, who was up 38%. Withdrawing immediately, I earned myself a solid 3,500,000. I would kiss this man on the mouth. I never doubted him for a second, feeling generous now. I purchased every single decoration Hawker had for sale for some reason and filled my store with them, getting some more slight buffs, opening up to realize the loiterer who I was annoyed at was my staff member looking for thieves. I apologize. The banker had truly proven himself to me. So I decided my main goal now was 3 million in the bank, which I would invest in its entirety. So closing the shop, I grinded for loot all night. In the morning of day 54, I chatted with Vulcan, discovering a new armor piece that increased my speed. I needed. Unfortunately, that required some golem dungeon goods, so quickly selling some expensive things for the banker's investment tomorrow, I wandered upwards when night fell, noticing the old man again and taking a seat. This time, he explained Old Pete, the skeleton I had found in the very beginning. He was a friend of Zenon and my father who simply got too curious about the dungeons. Hoping he rested well, I had basic resources for the spear in mind, but accidentally entering the desert dungeon by muscle memory, I took advantage of the situation and grinded some loot. Because the next morning was the great investment. I handed over 3 million of my hard-earned gold, hoping for the best. Anyways, I still needed a bunch of stuff for the armor, so I descended into the correct dungeon before realizing I had forgotten to empty my pockets since yesterday. What a waste of time. But look how quickly I took out the Guardian. That's pretty cool, right? Date 55, attempt 2. This was a very normal run where I managed to grab hopefully everything I needed for the exciting new armor. The 3 million, by the way, was currently down 16%. I have faith in you, banker boy. Luckily, I did have everything for the armor though, so making the pieces, it seemed I needed straw to upgrade them, necessary for their viability in the later dungeons, so I descended into the forest to gather some. Throughout the entire, quite long run, I did not find a single piece of straw. Imagining how bad of luck this was, I emptied my inventory and thinking I was destined for a heap this run, I got to work. Taking out the first Guardian, then the second, advancing through level 3, entering the boss room and fighting off everything there was to find. I opened the chest to find my first piece of straw that had blessed my eyes for the entire run thus far. A single piece. My entire day was gone. Still, I was able to upgrade all but one piece, which needed 2 more pieces, which I genuinely did not want to gather. As such, I just bought it from Lever Taylor, then bought the upgrade. Never mind, I was now too poor. Also, the banker was down 6%. It is not a good day for red TM. The third tier of armor required fireproof leather, which I was lacking, so until I had the funds to upgrade, I decided to head into the desert dungeon and gathered a bunch, successfully doing so. Turns out I already had the funds to upgrade, so I did now. With a full set of speed armor, I was actually moving. I feel way faster than before, but now worrying how on earth this would help me defeat the boss, I ignored my pessimistic self and enchanted all the pieces, checking the banker to see I was up 29%. Well, still 3 days to go. I decided to let it marinate to the moon for real. In the meantime, I sold some stuff just in case my gamble did not work out the way I wanted it to, heading out when nightfall once again with the goal of completing the entire dungeon. This goal in hindsight was a little embarrassing, as I ended up being knocked out by the second Guardian. I have no excuse. So on day 59, I decided this new armor was a complete waste of time and money, swapping back to the full defense build and also swapping my rings to some more useful ones. The banker was up 5% by the way. I have confidence in my boy. Further upgrading both of my weapons at the wooden hat, I headed back inside, my first attempt for today to defeat the desert boss. I took out the first Guardian, then the second Guardian, arriving at the pond, then headed inside. The boss burst out of a fabric covering, revealing a creepy stone snake. Unfortunately, I kind of screwed myself by fat fingering the potion button and predominantly using my bow. I eventually got knocked out. Oh well. Attempt 2. My inventory filled with potions, I was very confident in arriving at the same place, attacking the boss and running out of healing and running away in fear. That's enough of that for now. Setting up my shop at home, I realized the banker was down 43%. That's not very good. Selling a decent amount of items, not huge thanks to my performance yesterday, I decided to swap off my puppet pet who healed, going instead with the fire slime, but realizing I couldn't be bothered, I headed to bed for the first time in 10 days. It was the last day for the banker. If I didn't withdraw today, I would lose everything, and miraculously, he was up 28%. I made 800,000 gold. I will never be doubting this bold man again. Using this money, I happily enchanted my fists, making some potions, and began on my great plan to take out the snake boss. Today, I would complete step 1. Create a reusable teleporter in the pond room right before the final boss, so taking out the 2 guards, I arrived and placed it down. Nice! I could happily go home and recuperate before tomorrow, setting up my shop thanks to a lack of chest space. The next morning, my health bar was filled, and I had 4 shields, quickly making a small 6 million gold investment before heading through the teleporter. I walked into the room, the boss appeared. The shields worked very much in my favor, and purely relying on my bow, then the fire damage from my slime, I was harassed by these flying pests, eventually getting the boss down to just 1 head, finally taking it down. Damn, I feel very accomplished. Placing the third key in, I anticipated another friendly telling off from Zenon, but today, he was different. I was told to appreciate everything I had. He didn't bother telling me to stay safe, as he knew I wouldn't listen. The tech dungeon was open. My chests were damn full thanks to this influx, so opening the store, I planned to empty the back room out. That is exactly what I did, getting a solid 700,000, then excitedly heading outside, I entered the tech dungeon. It was darker than I remembered, a deep ambience, creating a very unwelcoming feeling. Wow. It may have been this psyching me out, but nonetheless, I was knocked out very early into my run. Day 64 was, interesting. I first realized all of my chests were full, so wandering outside, I upgraded my store to the final stage, adding a whole bunch of new slots, which I predominantly filled to make space in my inventory, heading out to check the banker, who was down 6%, then walked down to Hawker, where I purchased one new decoration, increasing generous customers. I do like money, so adding the decoration, I opened up. This was when the interest happened. Suddenly, everyone got very frightened and stopped their shopping, thanks to a bird having flown through the door. Catching it quickly, I was then asked to attend to a customer who seemed to just buy the product without knowing its price. I am very lost. Does not matter though, I made $500,000 gold that day, and confident in myself, I lost all confidence when walking into the first tech dungeon room. Staying very safe that night, I came across another one of old Pete's notes, apparently saying I was misnaming the guards as guardians, as the guardians were actually the bosses. Anyways, I looted then left. Looking for a new pet, I scrolled through and found the cube thing from the desert dungeons, which followed me around very satisfyingly, and also the banker was up 29%. I could make over $1 million if I withdrew now, but waiting a day couldn't hurt, right? That was foreshadowing. Now I had some loot to my name, I was able to upgrade a chestplate, which I quickly realized was the wrong one. Opening my store to make up for the lost funds, I spent the day experimenting the prices for the tech dungeon loot, which in general was scarily high. I was truly going to become a very rich man. For now, I wasn't though, thanks to my lack of confidence in surviving in the place, but wanting to change such a precedent, I grinded for resources all night. My new pet was completely useless. Compared to yesterday, the banker was down 21%. Foreshadowing is a narrative device in which a storyteller tells, sure, it was only on the rise from here. I asked Vulcan to upgrade my helmet, but upon realizing my currently held loot did not facilitate an opening of the Moonlighter, I decided to spend the day getting some. Unfortunately, there were no hints of the contents of door 5, as the warps just went to the desert. Very strange. Filling my inventory easily, I returned home, and properly emptying my pockets, I returned quickly, as the fist upgrade still required some peculiar items. Compared to yesterday, the banker was now down 51%. And tomorrow was the final day. Oh no. Beginning to lose faith, I used my non-investment funds to upgrade all 3 pieces of my armor before opening the shop, hoping not to go bankrupt at the hands of a bald man with a top hat. Luckily, sales were good though, and my financial situation stabilized, setting the new goal of taking out the first guard of the tech dungeon. As such, I arrived at the first pond and headed through, having a fast battle, ending in me being the victor. Truly inspiring stuff. I continued my plundering. Checking the fist upgrade, apparently I needed some strange lock-looking item, I wasn't sure, but upgrading all of my armor, I was sure that the banker had in fact locked right in, ending with 28% up. I never lost my trust, not for a second. With an easy 6 million in my pocket, I once again noticed my item discrepancy and decided that 2 runs today would fix my issue, which indeed it did, getting a bunch of loot and even discovering Tech History 1. My pocket will be pleased. Day 69. I invested 6 million into the banker, who I trust wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, this did mean that I could no longer afford the fist upgrade I had been looking for, so with the goal of $500,000 in my pocket, I opened up the store. The tech dungeon loot was truly nothing to be scoffed at, ending the day with 800,000 gold in profit. Very impressive. Purchasing the new white pristine fists, I enchanted them. Wandering to the dungeons to give them a try, very pleased with the damage output and also my inventory of goods. As a surprise to absolutely no one, the banker was down. Not to worry though, plenty of time, so just needing 1 more of these strange items to upgrade my bow and not wanting to open up shop today, I headed to the dungeons, gathered the items quickly enough and returned quickly enough. Realizing quickly enough, I was in fact too poor for the upgrade. Very inspiring stuff. So much so that I headed to bed for the first time in, I don't even know. The banker was down 6%, or at 360,000 gold. I wanted some weapon upgrades, and with my funds tied up in investment, I was forced to open up the store, which turned out to be possibly the best play I've ever made. By the time I closed, my bank account was 1 million gold bigger, and having done this in a single day was very satisfying. So also upgrading my bow, it seemed I'd actually sold my bow upgrade materials. No matter, heading up I saw the old man again, and taking a seat, I was told the story of my father's passing. It was notably nothing special. Trying to provide for his family back at home, his luck simply ran out. Unwillingly reminded that that very thing could happen to me, I descended carefully, looking for the bow upgrade materials. Now, the fire slime pet may be very useful, but it certainly wasn't fun, so swapping the lad temporarily, I saw that the bank was up 29%, but knowing my guy was headed to the moon, I waited again, upgrading my bow and wandering to the wooden hat where I placed in 3 enchantments. In that very short amount of time, I managed to spend almost 900,000 gold. That's fine, I could just sell more artifacts. My shop was looking awfully empty. So, I had a goal. Reach and take out the 2nd level guard for easy access to expensive loot beyond my dreams. Interestingly, along the way, I ran into a forest area instead of a peek at the following dungeon. Now, further curious of the contents of the 5th door, I eventually ran out of healing and was forced to retreat. I'd still gathered some decent loot though, so putting them all up for grabs, they were quickly sold, so I was happy to accept a whole bunch of quests and close up early, making another stupid sum of 1 million in a day, allowing me to further enchant my gloves, and relying on said gained power, I arrived at the 2nd level guard, ran inside with full confidence in my new weapon, and was promptly knocked out. The reason for this was not my incompetence, but simply a lack of potions. So brewing a bunch in preparation for future endeavors, I spoke with the banker, who was down 43%. That may actually be more impressive than making money. Remembering now that I had made the wrong chest plate, I checked the real one, but unfortunately missing one key item. Seeing as I had nothing to sell, I decided to head down to retrieve one. This was a relatively rare piece of loot, so upon finding the level 2 guard's pond, I welcomed the challenge, managing to take it out easily. Now that I had healing, eventually, thanks to my courage, finding the item, I immediately returned home where I upgraded the chestplate, leaving me with 1,195 health. But not stopping there, I also enchanted it for higher defense. I tested out this new build throughout the night, proving it was actually really strong. You see, in my fenced area here, I had 2 eggs currently being hatched, soon to become hopefully useful pets. So excited to test them, I realized the banker was up 28%, like the absolute unity was, making me 1.5 million gold. Now you would think I would be satisfied with this number, right? There couldn't be possibly any reason for more gold. I opened the store that day for the express reason of reaching 9 million for my next investment. Throughout the day, I managed another 1 million in profits. I did, however, misclick yes to a quest in the desert, so with some kind of obligation to complete it, I spent the night there, trying to complete it. One of the new pets had been hatched, that being a strange battery-looking fella who made potions from fallen enemies. Very interesting, I thought, as I invested 9.3 million gold into the banker. I am banking on you, my friend. This truly left me with nothing though, so selling a bit of my resources just to have some pocket money, I decided my game plan before defeating the tech dungeon guardian was to get a maxed version of every base weapon to check which clicked the most with me. As such, desert materials were first on the list, which were diligently collected along with a mimic egg, which was very exciting. What wasn't though was the fact the banker was currently down 16%. I believe. Making 1 out of the 3 weapons, I wanted 2 cores which were still required from the desert, so begrudgingly making my way down, I fought some guards and secured all the goods, returning just to realize I needed wood from the forest as well. Beginning to wonder about the need for these weapons in the first place, I descended into the forest, which posed no danger to me at all at this point, easily grabbing the material that I needed. There was just one more hurdle in my way, that being how poor I was, or more precisely, my current inability to supply liquid assets, and seeing as the banker was down today, I decided that selling more stuff was my only lifeline. I did not sell enough, and now desperate for money and materials from the tech dungeon for these max weapons, I bit the bullet and entered, staying safe and collecting in the easier levels. This instantly fixed one of my problems, that being materials, but still needing more funds. I checked in with the banker, who was up 29%. Using my cognitive skills though, I decided to withdraw, as he had never surpassed the first peak, and also I now had 12 million gold in my pocket. Happily purchasing all of the weapon upgrades, I marveled at my 3 new powerful maxed weapons and decided to not be so safe today and head into the tech dungeon in order to try them out. The sword and the shield were pretty useful for blocking these little fellas' attacks. The claymore did some huge damage to the guard, but ultimately I decided the spear was my best bet, as it had the longest range and decent damage. Trusting myself, I returned home and fully enchanted it. My new investment goal was 10 million gold for the banker, so opening the Moonlighter, I sold only my finest wares, seemingly having forgotten the power of tech dungeon loot and quickly surpassing such a goal. Now, just to wait for the banker, I realized I was yet to get a Tesla slime egg, a rare drop from a Tesla slime, and knowing how strong the other slimes were, I realized one would be crucial for the upcoming boss fight. As such, I promptly entered the tech dungeon and took some out, not getting the luck I needed, even coming across a trial chamber, which I completed fully, not receiving the egg. Damn. Both of my eggs had hatched though, one being a mimic fella who could hold items for me, and the other being a flying pest who would dash into enemies. Deciding to stay with my fire slime for now, I ran into the dungeon with no real idea in mind, taking out one guard, but running out of healing quickly enough to warrant running away. I still had the entire night though, so returning I fought diligently, but upon finding quite a chock-full room, I was overpowered and eventually knocked out. Although that did make a small dent in my loot count, I had been saving for long enough that a big day in the Moonlighter was inevitable, and a big day it was indeed. Closing up as late as possible, the store ended up making 2.5 million gold in profit. My financial issues are forever solved. Wandering to the dungeon though, I once again met with the old man. Today's topic of discussion was my mother's passing. Apparently, she went quickly after that of my father, peacefully, in the night, due to grief or other reasons I was not told. Not to quell on such things, I headed into the tech dungeon, hoping to find a Tesla slime egg for the final boss. Taking out the first guard and soon after the second, I did end up with an electricity invulnerability ring, which I was looking for, but still no egg. What I did have though was 12 million gold, so handing it all over to the banker, I wished the man good luck, then made the decision that I would head up to the final boss room to have a peek, understand its movements, then use my pendant to escape. But unfortunately, before I could even make it to the pond room, I noticed my distinct lack of suitable healing and exited to be safe, continuing with this mood in avoiding the further rooms that night and staying in level 1 just searching around for a slime egg. I once again did not get lucky. At this point, I had hatched every single pet available other than the one I wanted. No matter though, the banker was up on day 1 somehow, only 4% though, so leaving it and opening up my store again, I made a quick 2 million and thought today would finally be the day I set my eyes on the tech dungeon boss. Taking out the first guard easily, I ran through with efficiency, arriving at the second guard who also posed no threat, somehow was unfortunate enough to explore the entire second floor without finding the pond, eventually locating it and carefully headed through. A massive energy ball stood before me, exploding impressively and beginning its attacks. Hovering over my pendant, I stood back using my bow, dodging attacks and deciding I would leave as soon as I had a proper grasp on its itinerary. I might as well keep attacking. I'll leave when it gets low. I had just defeated the Guardian of the Tech Dungeon. Very proud of myself, I collected my reward. The next morning, the key was placed in, and slowly, the 5th door opened. Zenon told me old Pete could rest easy now. No one knew what was behind that door, and I should leave it be, acknowledging I would probably not listen. In other news, the banker was up 12. It was looking good for Red TM Industries. But still wanting to wait, I headed to Hawker's and bought the final decoration unlocked by the Tech Guardian, randomly hitting a tree which dropped a coin. Forever money hungry, I shook every single tree in the town before opening the store again for some profit and heading to bed, knowing I would need the rest for tomorrow. Day 86. The day I entered the 5th door of Rhinoka, after shaking every tree in town. And what's more, the bank was up 60% today, withdrawing immediately. If you'd look at that, I had just made 7.2 million in profit, with 22.5 million in total. Ultimately, this didn't matter though. It was time to enter the door. Walking in slowly, it seemed to be an infinite corridor of potion substance, eventually finding a larger opening with a fallen dragon of sorts, a place previously lived in but long abandoned. There sat panels around the 4 keys I had gathered, talking about Prototype L and escaping without starving. Most were no longer functional. Wandering forth, I jumped into a portal, arriving in an arena of sorts, a ship from which a strange being appeared. Introduced as an interdimensional pirate, it began to attack me, so using my spear and my silly little pet, I dodged back and forth quickly enough, taking him out. That was easy enough, expecting the credits to roll. Uh-oh. It seems I spoke too soon. Stage 2 was a massive tentacle monster with shields who took me out without even trying. Oh well, it was time to take out the big guns. Swapping to the fire slime, I spent some time checking the trees again for any pennies that fell out. Quickly returning to the 5th door, running through the long hallway to greet the pirate, witnessed his swag and new attack, then stage 2 appeared. I activated my grand plan, consisting of, sitting at the back and spamming my arrows. One move though sucked me straight to him. Expertly dodging, I made my escape, and I would like to ask, what just took me out? A little stressed, I unwinded in the golem dungeon. Look at these cute little fellas. I digress. Checking tree time, then once again fighting the interdimensional pirate time, arriving at the portal to take out stage 1, and once again run to the back and spammed my bow. Whenever I was pulled in, I took out the triple enchanted spear to deal massive damage, dodging the tentacles, realizing I was in danger and rotating left to bow spam and finishing him off with one swing. The boss was finished. Outside though, there was a commotion. Some strange alien people, police of some sort, had arrived and were shutting down the dungeons permanently, saying it was illegal to acquire such artifacts. These dungeons were appearing on all different planets apparently, but when I finally returned, they gave me special permission because I took out the boss, also saying I could join the Space Commission or something, and as such, the credits rolled, but I still have much to do. Endgame Step 1. Invest 22 million gold into the banker and hope for the best. My goal now was to get my hands on every single weapon in the game, which included the alternate paths here, unfortunately requiring a bunch more golem dungeon loot, so descending quickly, I got a whole heap, returning to make a heap of weapons. Not all of them though, and still needing some golem chisels, I headed down in the morning of day 90, running through the rooms, gathering as best as I could, being meticulous as to take out exactly what I needed, and my game crashed. It was the morning again, doing everything again, but to an admittedly lower effort. I ascended to remember I needed wood from the forest too, descending again, and happy that crawling these places no longer felt stressful in any sense. I managed to get everything I needed. As such, Vulcan got to work. Unfortunately, this didn't cover anything, and I still needed 16 chisels. That would surely take a while, and the bank was up 12% today, feeling a bit lazy today. I purchased all 16 from my direct competitor, managing to craft some more weapons, now faced with a challenge of 27 wood. 27 was a big number, but knowing just how common they were in the Golem dungeon, I made my descent. Now, to explain, to my knowledge, how these places were conceived. The pirates who I met and defeated had the technology to open these gates to different worlds and use them to pillage the loot from unsuspecting lands. In retaliation, the flora and fauna created the guards to stop them, and eventually the interdimensional police got involved since this was obviously illegal. Well, hey, I promise I'll leave as soon as I get this damn wood. It was much rarer than I expected, and returning home, I decided just to buy them, and the store was closed. Day 92. The banker was up 60%, now sitting with 35.7 million gold in my pocket. I bought the golem wood and checked with Vulcan to see I needed 18 forest wood and 22 acid for the next weapon level. And deciding to put an end to my useless spending, I dedicated the morning to gathering these resources. Unfortunately, but very expectedly, I did not get enough, arriving back home in shame to check Vulcan's smith again, see that lots of cores were needed in the near future, and descended into the desert dungeon. I got some cores in the end, but not enough. All this looting had created a massive overflow in items back at home, and chests not having any more capacity, I tried my best to sort them out, and left. A problem for me in 5 minutes or so. For now, more useless spending in the form of all the wood and acid I needed. I returned to Vulcan and upgraded all my weapons to the 3rd stage, doing some maths, and realizing I needed 13 cores for the 4th stage. I do not have 13 cores, nor the space for anything else, so spending the morning getting rid of everything I could, I decided to just try my best to get as close to the 13 count as I could, running through the many rooms and defeating guards left and right. I ended this great run, a massive, unbelievable 1 core closer to my goal. As much as this did allow me to craft one of the weapons, I still needed 12 more, and a bunch of nuggets as well, and seeing the 35 million gold in my pocket, and my unwillingness to return to the desert, I just bought them all again, made all of the stage 4 weapons, and was able to make one stage 5, completing all of the short swords in the game, but requiring much more expensive items. I first opened up the Moonlighter to fund any possible material purchases from across the street in the near future. Then at nightfall, I begrudgingly made my return to the tech dungeon, running through the rooms, and actually ending with more than enough batteries collected. Less can be said about the other resources. Metal sheets were my main concern, and not wanting to be concerned about them anymore, I simply purchased them all. I don't have my riches for nothing, and opening up the blacksmith, I was finally allowed to craft up every single max tier weapon in the game, getting a separate achievement for each one, and finally, the weapon master. Well, having all of these weapons, the obvious next step is to try them out. Entering the desert dungeon, a place with some danger but not so much, I tested each one against the enemies inside. With slightly lower damage but added status effects, the short sword and fists really didn't catch my eye, but the spear and the bow, being pokey weapons themselves, suited this style, and were my favorites. Returning home, I spent the night organizing my chests and refilling the shop. The banker was back on day 96, happily accepting my 13.2 million gold investment. I had also remembered the small change able to be found in trees, and got back to work, hitting every single one. An easy 10 coins richer, I decided to enter the Golem dungeon today to get the 1000 enemies eliminated achievement. This would hopefully be completed fairly quickly though, so doing everything I could, I completed my run and ran straight back inside to get back to work as time went on, getting more and more attached to my little pet. Just look at this little guy storing the items away and running around. I love my little pet. I ended the day with 88 enemies slain. Once again, the banker was up on day 1, my goat. I had a whole lot of less expensive stuff now, so taking the opportunity to try out the sale box, I filled the thing up and opened my store. These were all lower level dungeon materials, so the profit today barely made a difference to my fortune, and not yet having the 1000 achievement, I popped through the entrance portal. Fairly far into my expedition, the advancement was finally achieved. A great day to be a Red TM subscriber. In the morning of day 98, I wanted to check out the rest of the wooden hat, and perusing, I found a potion that reveals the Golem dungeon. Brewing some up, I returned to the labyrinth, setting myself the challenge to complete it, exit the portal in the boss room while taking down as little enemies as possible. By revealing every time I arrived at a new stage, I tactically went the most efficient way to the next area, appearing relatively quickly at the end, but unfortunately being forced to defeat every enemy in the final room to escape. Ending with a total of 32, I returned home to organize my chests again, and thanks to my useless adventuring, I was forced to set up my shop simply as further storage. I spent the rest of the night in the tech dungeon to get some real loot. But on day 99, I didn't want to man my store. Instead, I asked my staff member to look after the Moonlighter, brewed some potions, and checking the banker, he was up 60% again. I actually love this silly little bald top hat man. With 52 million gold in my pocket now, I took advantage and fully enchanted both of the new weapons I had decided to adopt. Heading to the tech dungeon for the day to test both my spear and bow against tougher enemies, and to finally find the esteemed Tesla slime egg. I indeed tested my weapons, which were decent, but never ended up getting that damn egg. And arriving home that night, I realized my shop had never opened. Strange. But finally, it was day 100. Asking my staff member again, I realized I needed to place the items in the chest to be sold. So apologetic, I did exactly that, running down to the tech dungeon where I chilled out the entire day, if you can call this chilling out, and arrived home at nightfall to gather my money earned by the staff member, and finally wandering to the old man to have a conversation. Like we always did. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe as I'm looking for 100,000 at some point, and I'll give Moonlighter a pretty decent 8.5 out of 10. Again, thanks so much to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Join 70 million worldwide players for free on PC, Xbox, or PlayStation simply by clicking the link in the pinned comment or the video description. New and returning players who haven't played in at least 6 months will get a bonus pack with currency, multiple premium vehicles, and exclusive cosmetics.